Om Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vighnopashantaye Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir me sada Yenaksharasamamnayam Adhigamya Maheshwarat Kritsnam Vyakaranam Proktam Tasmai Paninaye Namaha Vakyakaram Vararuchim Bhashyakaram Patanjalim Paninim Sutrakarancha Pranatosmi Munitrayam Vagartha Viva Samprikto Vagartha Pratipattaye Jagatah Pitaro Vande Parvati Parameshwaro Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Namaste. Welcome to class. Nice to see everyone. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be grateful for, so I hope you enjoyed that. So for the do now, for the warm-up, I had save dhatu. So if you remember, we're talking about atmanepadi dhatus. So the A type dhatus. So this is another one of them, save. So we can do it together. Sevate, sevete, sevante, sevase, sevete, sevadve, seve, sevavahe, sevamahe. So hopefully you got that okay. So just as a recap, so we're in our sentences, we're talking about two types of padams, Tingantam padam and Subantam padam. Under Tingantam padam, there's a dhatu plus ting pratyayaha. Under nouns, there's pratipadikam plus supratyayaha. Now, so we're looking at dhatus. There's 10 types of ganas, and there's 3 types, P-A-U, Parasmaipadi, Atmanepadi, and Ubhayapadi. So those 3 types are what we're talking about. Right now we're talking about Atmanepadi, dhatus, and then Atmanepada, things, pratyaya. Okay? So hopefully that GPS, you know where we are. Now, let's, we can chant these together. The Atmanepada ting pratyas. Te, ite, ante. Se, ite, dve. E, vahe, mahe. Okay? So this is just a reminder, right? It's been a few weeks, so hopefully this is not looking like totally new. It's not looking like Mandarin or different language. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is we're going to go to we're just going to extend what we've been learning. So this is on page 39 of your textbook, book 1, page 39. It says type A dhatus in the 4th gana. So far we've only been looking at first gana dhatus, first gana atmanepadi dhatus. So on page 38, we looked at, on page 37 rather, on page 37 we saw iksh, kash, bad, etc. Those are all 1A. Now we're going to page 39, which are 4A. So it's still atmanepadi, but now we're talking about 4th gana dhatu, so the 4th group. So just a reminder, right, we have 10 groups of dhatus. So far, we've been focusing on 1. Now we're going to look at 4 for the Atmanepadi. So in this, we can see on that second column, we see all the dhatus. So jan, meaning to be born, becomes the anga changes a lot. So this is something to know. So jan, to be born, becomes jaya, the anga, in the fourth column. Jan to jaya. So that's just something to note. It's just, there's this rule like that changes it from jan to jaya. Besides that, most of them, if you look at the rule at the top of the page, what we do is ya gets added to the suffix, ya. Okay, so we have our dhatu. Okay, if I have my dhatu, and then for fourth gana, I had a yakara. Okay, that's ya. So deep, I add the ya, and then it becomes deepya, meaning to shine, deep. That's where the word Deepavali comes from. Vali is row, and Deepa are lamps, so to shine. Pad becomes Padya, to gain. Buddh, to know, becomes Buddhya. We're just adding that yakara. Man plus yakara becomes manya. Yud plus yakara, meaning to fight, yudhya. That's where the name for war is yuddha, right? So it comes from the same dhatu. Vid, for a, becomes vidya. We're just adding that da and ya, and then it looks like this, okay? This is not a different letter. It's just da plus yakara. And then srij plus yakara is srijya, to create. So these are just something to know. So let's just practice with one. You can open your workbook to page 38. Very close in number, that's interesting. So on page 38, you'll see jan dhatu like this of your workbook, page 38 of your workbook. Hopefully you have that with you. Actually, let me do it like this. I'll do it from here so it'll be a little bit more clear. Okay, so we're looking at jan dhatu. Now jan is 4a, so we're writing 4a, and it means to be born. We're just not going to fill this in for now. And then we're going to look at the angam. So what is the transformation that takes place? Since it's 4, we're going to add a yakara. Oh, sorry, this one's a little bit different, remember? Jan becomes jaya. This is just something we have to know. Remember, that was the first one we saw. Jan becomes jaya. So this one doesn't quite follow the rule. Even though we see yakara, it's a little bit different. Okay, so let's add 1, 2, 3. Third, second, 1. Ekavachanam, dvivachanam, bahuvachanam, prathama purushaha, madhyama purushaha, uttama purusha. Okay, so jaya, we add our suffix. Now, if you're not sure, you can look at page 38 of your book and you can see the suffixes. So jaya plus te becomes jayate. Jaya plus ite becomes jayete. Remember that guna takes place. Jaya plus ante, jayante. Let me know if you need me to slow down. You can write me a private message. Jaya plus se, jaya se. Jaya plus ite, jayete. Jaya plus dve becomes jayadve. Jaya plus a. Remember, this is also that second letter eats the first letter, so it becomes jaye. Jaya plus vahe becomes jayavahe, long. And jaya plus mahe becomes jayamahe. Okay, does anybody have any questions with this so far? We're good? Thumbs up? Do we want to do one more example or we're okay? We're okay? All right. So the next one, I won't do it, but pad is the dhatu. Can you tell me in the chat what is the anga, just so I can tell if we know it's 4a? What is the anga? Can you tell me in the chat just so I know you got the idea? Okay, perfect. Yep. So we're seeing Harprasadji, Kuriji, Shantiji, Urmila, Fatima, Saroja, Padya, Rupa. Okay, Padya. Yeah, correct. So Padya, Padya. You can write it like this also. That's another way of writing it. So Padya. Okay, so we'll now switch topics. I'm going to go back to the other screen. So that would be padyate, padyete, padyante, etc. Right? We just follow the same type of rule. Okay. Now, so if you go to the back of the book, to the exercise, this is the second part of the exercise that we didn't do. So this is page 164 on the right side of 164, the side that you didn't do for homework. Now these are all, most of these are 4a. So that's why I didn't have you do it. So jayate is which dhatu? It's jan dhatu. Translation, he, she, it is born. Deepyate. Deepyate is deep dhatu, right? 1 or 4a, to shine. Meaning translation, he, she, it shines. Okay, because it's Pratama Purusha Ekavachanam. So that's how you do the homework. So you can fill this side out, this other side. Okay, now we're going to a completely different topic. Now, to be honest, this isn't my favorite thing to teach. So just because it's a bit complicated, but we'll get through it, and it'll be enjoyable Sanskrit the whole time. So what you can do is, if you have a dhatu kosha, now I could, I'm gonna put it in the chat right now in case you don't have it, and you can open it up. Let me just pull it up for you all. Okay, so I just posted it in the chat. If you need it, you can open it there. Otherwise, hopefully you have the physical book. Physical book is always the best thing to have. All right, so a dhatu kosha. So dhatu kosha, what dhatu kosha is Panini Muni. So Panini Muni is the sage. His name is Panini, not Panini. He's not your sandwich. He is the great teacher who has systematized the language. He created the grammar system which we are learning. Now, he took all the dhatus and made a book of them called Dhatu Kosha. Now, Dhatu Kosha goes by the gana number. So go by first gana dhatu, second gana, third gana, all the way to 10th gana. But it goes by gana and doesn't necessarily go by alphabetical order. So then what teachers have done to make it easier to find is they've put those same dhatus in alphabetical order. And this is what we call Dhatu Kosha. So Dhatu Patha is the original book by Panini, listing by Gana number. But this Dhatu Kosha is alphabetical order. So the book you have is alphabetical order of the Dhatus. I think it says what, 2,000 of them? Now, this we can open to page 35 of book 1, page 35. So this is just close to what we were doing. Page 35, we're going back a little bit. So on page 35, you'll see this chart, okay? Now, what this chart is it helps us to find dhatus in the dhatu kosha. Now, why do we need this? Now, some of the dhatus, if you look up, you'll find it immediately, right? Let's think of some. Let's start with one. So let's look up as dhatu. We'll start there. So you're going to open your book. Tell me what page as dhatu is on. So what you do is, I'll show you on my screen too how I'm looking for it, is if I start from the beginning, this is the book. In this, you look at this column C. In column C, you look for us, 4P. We're going to look for that us. Let's see if we find it. Us, 4P, to throw on page 2. Right? So it becomes as, asyati, asyataha, asyanti, etc. So this first column that we see is the original dhatu from dhatu pataha. In the second column, we see the Sanskrit meaning of the dhatu. So he wrote the definition of the dhatu in Sanskrit. But since we're learning Sanskrit, it doesn't really help us. Also, you'll notice in the first column, there's some extra symbols like Chandra Bindu and different swaras. The reason those are there are these never were put into a formal book. These were chanted. And because they were chanted, the different swaras and different symbols told you what gana it might be, for example. Or it told you whether it would be P, A, or U. But we've lost that, how to interpret these over time. So really we can look at column C. Column D tells us our gana. E tells us our 3 groups, P, A, or U. F, we don't need to worry about F right now. That is more complex. We don't need to talk about that. And G is the definition in English. Okay, so we saw us on page 2. Now, there's some that we won't be able to find. So for example, if we look at Jai Dhatu, so I'll write it here. So Jai. So it says it on page 35 in the middle of the book, right under there, it says Jai Dhatu. So if we look for Jai, so let's go and we'll skip all the way down. We're going to look for Jai Dhatu. So I'm just teaching you how to use this Dhatu Kosha. It's important to do it because we need to be able to go from the verb, and to understand, we need to look it up. Sometimes we don't know exactly what it means. It's a dictionary, right? So Jai Dhatu, if I'm looking for Jai, I can't find Jai, right? If you look through it, you won't be able to find it. That's because Jai, or sorry, I'm not looking for Jai Dhatu. I'm looking for, let's see, I'll write it for you so you understand what I'm doing. Okay, so here, let's say I see the word, right? It says Jayasi. Now Jayasi, I see 2 parts. I see C and I see jaya. So C we know is the suffix. So the first thing I do is take off that suffix and I'm left with jaya or jay. So now looking at that, I might think that that's the dhatu and I'll look it up, right? And just like what we did, we looked it up and we couldn't find it. We couldn't find any such thing as jay or jaya dhatu. Now what we do then is we have to use this chart to help us. Now what this chart does is it helps us understand some simple sandhi rules. So we have our original vowels here, I, U, and R. I, U, and R are some of the simple vowels, and these vowels can go through different changes based on the sound that it's next to. It's called a sandhi rule. When it meets another sound, sometimes it can change what it looks like. Some of the changes are listed below. So for example, E can be long E, or E can be A by something what we call guna sandhi. E could be A by something what we call vriddhi, what it says on the left. E could be yakara by something what we call yan sandhi. Or E could be I or A. Oh no, sorry, let me backtrack that. That arrow, this A can be I or I. Okay, A. So based on what we see, we can trace backwards. So now I see J. I see J-A-Y. I. I see I. Now on this chart, I have to look for where do I see I? I see I all the way at the bottom. Then I want to trace it back. So what I'm going to look for in the dhatu kosha is I can come from A, E, or E. How do I know that? Because this specific one, A, can become I or Av, or these can be I, the first two can be I or Av also. Basically, we just trace it back. So it's important you draw this arrow with me. Okay, so draw this arrow from the third to the last. That's a specific thing to do. Why I'm drawing that arrow there is because this sandhi is a little bit different, this last one. This last one, A becomes I or I, O becomes Av or Av. Okay, I know this is going over your head, but it's not as difficult as it looks. We just see what's in the dhatu and then we have to trace it back. So I see I, and now I'm gonna follow my arrow and I go back to, maybe a J, and then I see what's before it. Before that is G, maybe it's G, or maybe it's G, short. Then I wanna look this up into the dictionary, J, G, or G, and see what I find. So you look in the dictionary, we see G, G1P to conquer, and G1P to defeat. So it could be either one of these. So now we know it's 1P. So we know it's G because we couldn't find long E or J, and it's 1P. to conquer or to defeat. Okay, let's look at an easier example to understand this, and then I'll let you do it on your own. Okay, so let's look at the dhatu bhav, or let's look at bhavati. Okay, the verb bhavati. Now, if I'm looking at bhavati, if I'm trying to look up this word, I look at what's the suffix. I see ti, and then I would, if I want to look this up, I can cross that out, and I would look up, let's see, bhav, and see if we can find bhav, right? So now we look in the dictionary, see if we can find bhav. So you're going to go all the way. You're going to keep going all the way to around page 48, 49, 50, somewhere around there. Oh, not quite that far. Page 34, around there, sorry. Okay. So now I'm on the buzz. No, I have to look. Do I see bhav? And if I look through it, I don't see, I see bhuv, but I don't see bhav. So now I have to go back to this chart. If I go back to this chart, I have, right? I have BHAV. So we can look up this of and see where we see it on this chart, okay? Okay, so we see of at the bottom, of. So now we can look up bo, bhu, and bhu and see which we find. Bo, bhu, or bhu. Short o, and see which of the three we find in the dictionary. And then I'll take a question after this. Now we don't see bo, we don't see short bhu, but we see long bhu, bhu, 1p, or bhu, 10a. Now, how do you know which one it is? That you have to, we said bhavati, so we know it's parasmaipada, so we know it's going to be the 1p, not the 10a. Meaning to be, to live, to be born. Any three of these meaning. So I know he, she, it is, he, she, it lives, or he, she, it is born from bhavati. Okay, let's do one more example and then I'll take that question. Sorry, I'll just take one more example. So let's look at tarati, the verb tarati. Now, if you look this up, I would look for tar. But if you look up tar, you're not going to find anything, right? So we take it to the chart. Sorry, it's a lot of stuff. Tar is ar, right? Or repa, whatever one. So we see ar, that's the third column. So then we trace up. It can be either tr, it can either be tr or tr, because we saw ar. So then we trace up. Tr or tr. We looked that up in the dictionary. And can you tell me what page and if you find tr or tr? Can you tell me in the chat if you find tr or tr? It's around page 22, 23, 24, somewhere around there. Okay. Yep. So some people are typing in page 23. You'll see dhatu, tr, the second one, meaning to cross over. So tarati means, what does tarati means in the chat? If you know the meaning of the dhatu, tr, what does it mean? Tarati. Yeah. But specifically, not just to swim, not just to cross over, but it's a verb, tarati, right? So he, we have a subject. He, she, or it swims or crosses over. Okay. Now, Harpasadji, you had a question?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Now, let's take bhavati.
Yes.
And you use bhav.
Yeah.
Bhav is there.
Bhav is there.
Bhava. Bhava is the anga, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you look at the anga.
You look at the anga, correct?
Okay. And that A is here.
That is what?
Is in this guna, gunaha, gunaha row.
It's in the guna row. Okay.
Okay. So since it is in the guna row, we have to take the original as row.
Okay, so not quite. Okay, so we see bhav, bhava.
Right.
So from that, we would think maybe the dhatu is bhav, right? Because we're adding an akara to whatever first. So, okay, you can say it's ava or of, either one. Now, what you want to look for is of or ava on this chart. You're not looking for just akara.
Okay.
Akara is nowhere on this chart. On this third column, it says a plus ra. Ar.
Oh, okay.
So you won't find akara anywhere on this right side of the chart. So you're looking for what's on the right side of the chart.
Okay.
So even if you try to look for a, you won't find a. So then you look for va or ava or of.
Okay.
And then so you can start and then you'll find yourself in this middle column here. So if you're in this middle column, then you start from the top. So then bhu will become bhava, or bhu will become bhava, or bhav, or bo. And you look for those.
Oh, okay.
So first you got to narrow down which column you're looking at and then start from the top.
Okay.
Okay, let me know if you have any more questions. I'm just going to put you on mute. Okay, Nilema?
Yeah. I have a question regarding this chart table.
Yeah.
Say you use the word bhava.
Mm-hmm.
When you use the word bhava, your arrow starts from O and goes down up to ava. So ava means u, long u, and o. The o and va, which are the fourth and the fifth, does that belong to ava?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't know.
Okay. My question was the first, say, for example, bhava, like how Harprasadji mentioned. If we take that word, so for ava, you could use anywhere from o and go higher u, long u, or short u.
Yeah, correct.
And what about the ow and the word? Does that belong to ava or?
No, so that's also, we only want to go upwards from looking at our, so we could also look up bow or just bhav.
Okay. So you could look at anything then.
You can look at anything in that column.
Since you made that arrow, I was a little confused.
Yeah. So if you start at the bottom, all right, so let me make this into a row. I'll make it more. I'll make it more clear. My pen. Okay, so, oops. Okay. If you find yourself looking at one of the last row, then start at the third column or third row and then go up. If you find yourself, for example, seeing just this letter, then right. So if you see B, then just look at the first two. If you see just this letter, bo, then look at the first two. If you see yourself bo, then just look at the first two. These four are just modifications of the first two. This one could be modification of the first three. Is that clear? Okay, that's not clear, is it? Let me. Okay. So look at your chart on page 35. Mine has too many markings on it. So we also have to wrap up in a minute, but on this chart, you'll see E, A, I, Ya, I, Av. Okay, so now let's just get rid of that last row, okay, for now. So for example, if I see tar, all right, so I see ar or just a repa, okay? So I see rakara or just ar. Which one? Which either one? It could be either, right? So now I'm looking, where do I see that on my chart? And I see that on the last column. I see ar or re, ra in the middle. Now from there, I'll look at the first two, long or short r or long r. That's all I'll look up, tr or tr. Okay. Let's see, I'm gonna make up a dhatu. Let's say I see tar, let's say I say tar. Now tar is in that fourth. I will still just look up tr or tr. Those first. So you just go up to the top two. You always just go up to the top two. Okay, so let's say I'm just making up dhatus right now. Let's say I say bo, I would look up the first two in that column, boo or boo, and I would see if I find either of those. Okay, so you just go up to the top two. Only time when we break that rule is if we find something in the last row, ayavayava. It says I, of, I. If you find yourself in that row, okay, so let's say I find bhav. I see myself, I'm in the last row. I see of, right? Of. So I'm in that last row. Now this last row has a bit of a special rule. You have to go to the third column and up, not just the first two. You have to go to the first three. So I have to look up bo, bhu, and boo. If I see J, then I have to look up J, G, and G. Only time you have to start from that third column is if you get something that's on the bottom. If you get something else, you just have to look at the first two. Okay. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, that's okay also. We're gonna continue from here next time. You can see why this isn't my favorite thing to talk about. It's a bit complicated because I have to teach all of these sandhis first. But to teach the sandhis, you need to be able to look up in the dictionary. So I'm just trying to give some tools. But the main conclusion from all of this is this chart, you want to trace up to that first two or three rows rather. Okay, so you just trace upwards. Okay, let's just take like a 2 or 3 minute break. We'll come back at 8:13. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We can start coming back. And if you have your screen off, it would be great if you can turn it on so I can see you. But if you're shy, that's okay also. It just helps so I can see if what I'm saying is landing or not. Don't worry, we're not talking about dhatus anymore.